These are 10 looping tips that you need to know when setting up your new loop pedal. If you're just about to or have finally got yourself a new loop station like the Boss RC5, RC500, RC600 and so much more, these tips and tricks will help you get the most out of your latest purchase. The first step is to get the best possible audio from whatever speakers you are using. The most common way to use a loop station is with an acoustic guitar and either a small gigging speaker or more preferably a PA system. A PA system will output the full dynamic range from your loop station so you can hear all of the nuances from the bass of hitting the guitar on your drum beats to the crispness of your guitar chords and vocals. A PA system preserves much better clarity than something like a Roland Cube that all of the buskers use. Either way, regardless of your choice, the cabling will remain the same. First, turn down the volume on your mixer or guitar amp and then connect your loop station as follows. The input is used for your guitar and instruments, and then the output will go to your mixing console or the input of your amp, where you can then check your instrument level and set the correct volume. This is the simplest way to start looping. Now, if you're going to use an electric guitar and electric guitar amp, plugging into the front of your amplifier isn't always the best option, as the following will happen. You go ahead and record your loops, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'd record your loops, it sounds fine, but then when you engage the overdrive channel, suddenly all your loops sound dreadful and you can't do a guitar solo over the top without it being completely messy. You know, you want to have a bit of distortion for your solo, but you want your guitar chords to be clean. There's no space because as soon as you switch on the amplifier, it's going to switch everything that's being inputted straight into it. So I'm going to show you a way to actually fix this, which is using the effects loop. First, you want to connect just your electric guitar into the input of your amplifier. The cabling for the effects loop is pretty simple. You want to route the send of your effects loop to the input of your loop station. In this example, I'm using input A to keep everything mono. For the output of your loop station, connect this to the return of your effects loop. Once again, I'm keeping everything mono and using output A. In this example, I'm laying down some chords with my amplifier on the clean channel. Once the loop begins to play back, I then channel switch to the overdrive channel found on my Blackstar. And as we are using the effects loop in this amplifier, I can now freely solo over the top of this loop with the overdrive channel activated without it disturbing the output of my loop pedal. Next, let's actually go through the process of how you use a loop pedal if this is your first ever time operating one. Now, regardless of the brand you actually choose, whether that be Boss, Headrush, some cheap one off of Amazon, the light indicators and everything works pretty much identical. So, when you're actually recording a loop, first off, you want to make sure you prepare your foot so it's sort of right there, armed and ready on the button. You don't want to sort of be like, oh, panicking, and then you click the wrong buttons. You want to be armed and ready so you're nice and comfortable and relaxed. First off, on a Boss pedal, when the loop tracks are sort of neutralized and empty, they will be blue. So you can see the blue lights on loop tracks 1, 2, 3, and obviously if we click this button here, we've got 5, 6, etc. As soon as you start recording, 1, 2, 3, 4, the loop will turn red for recording. And then when you're ready to play back, you press the exact same foot switch, and then the loop track will turn green. Another useful feature on these Boss loop pedals are the loop light indicators over here that sort of show you the progress of the actual loop. And same with the color indicators. You got red for record, it's blue for empty, and then it also has green for when it's playing back. Once a loop track on the new generation of Boss loop stations is occupied with a loop, the loop lights will go from blue to white, so then you can mentally remember and visually see where you've actually recorded something and where you haven't. Pretty easy stuff to use. Once you've actually got your bass loop layer down, so if we play this back, if you wanted to add further layers, you could go ahead and click the record play foot switch again, and it will then turn yellow or orange, depending on the brand. It might be yellow, orange, or red again if it's a cheaper pedal. This then will take you into the overdub state where you can go ahead and add some layers. So we'll do it now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we've got our little overdub. And if you've got other effects pedals, you could add a little bass part, vocal loops, whatever you so desire in this actual section of your loop. And then you can go ahead and just click the stop foot switch, or if you're on a single track loop pedal like the Boss RC5, you would just go ahead and double tap on the record play foot switch and it would stop it. Further useful features to know are how you actually clear loops. So we just added that overdub. If we press and held the record play foot switch for a couple of seconds, this would then initiate an undo. So you can hear it's completely gone, and if we press and held it for another 2 seconds, that loop track has returned. So that allows us to sort of phase sections in and out, especially if you have a single track loop station. This almost gives you an extra loop track that you don't have on the pedal, very useful. And then finally, once you're finished, you can go ahead and press and hold the stop foot switch for a few seconds when the loop track stopped, and it will completely clear it off, and you can start again. If you're wanting to deep dive into performance techniques, practicing techniques for improving your timing, and so much more, you can join hundreds of students enjoying my Loop Pedal Basics course, a perfect match for anybody who is brand new to using a loop pedal and wants to shortcut their learning curve so they can get to making music and having fun so much faster. You can learn more using the link in the pinned comments and also in the video description. If you are struggling with the timing of your loop pedal and you can't quite get the coordination correctly, either you're pressing the pedal too soon or way too late, you should maybe consider using auto record. The way that we set this up is as follows, and it's available on pretty much every Boss loop station. If you head into your memory settings and scroll over to the record modes, and then head on over to auto record, if you go ahead and turn this on, what will happen is when you press this record foot switch, it will basically wait until you play something on your guitar. So let me show you an example. So what will happen with auto record is if I click the record foot switch, it will arm the recording process and it will blink until I strike the first chord of my progression. It'll basically start recording on the one of the beats. It'll be perfectly in time. So if we go ahead and play a chord, you'll see the recording process has now started, signified by the solid red light. And then if I go ahead and click playback, you'll see that we now have a perfectly accurate loop from what we just performed. But there are further settings that you can use to assist you with the timing of your loops. And this setting can be found within your rhythm settings on a majority of Boss products, and it's called record count. So if you scroll over to the end and you find record count. So now with record count, if we go ahead and click the record foot switch, it will give us a count in and then start recording. And then boom, we got a perfect loop with that nice little 1, 2, 3, 4, and then starts counting in. And you don't have to have an over-the-top drum beat with this. You could just have like a little metronome that you route to your headphones so you can play along and practice perfectly, but it's a really nice feature. Don't feel afraid to use these and think of them as some form of learning stabilizer. There are many times that I use auto record and record count on my main looping rig with the RC505 to give me plenty of time to get my hands over to my drum pads or my guitar. On these smaller loop stations like the Boss RC5 and RC500, sometimes you do need a little extra accessibility with further buttons to control areas of your looper. This could be a fast and easy way to initiate the record process, the playback, the stopping of multiple loops, or even doing things like undo/redo. When I was a kid, like 12 years old, it really blew my mind when I found out that I could expand the functionality of my RC30 using the FS6 or Boss FS7 external foot pedals. I no longer needed to struggle with the silly shortcuts. Like on the RC500, for example, you can switch between track 1 and track 2, but if you want to select both at the same time, you got to hold this down for a few seconds, then you can play back, and then you can stop, and you got to press it again to disengage. Whereas with an external foot switch, you could just map a command to go all start, all stop, undo, redo. I would highly recommend purchasing one of these, as your loop pedal can do so much more than you probably may think. I actually have over 47 videos on my website specifically taking you through everything the RC500 can do, all of the features and how you can set them up with easy to follow video tutorials that you should definitely take a look at, as well as all of my other product guides on pretty much every Boss loop station ever made. All of these smaller loop stations are often battery powered, and if this is your first loop pedal, you may be disappointed to hear that you only get a few hours of playtime from them. This means that you can soon quickly fly through packs of batteries, and it could end up costing you a fortune. A personal recommendation of mine is using some rechargeable batteries. These ones are from Amazon, they're a pretty good price, do a great job, and have this compact charger included. Alternatively, you could purchase an official Boss power brick. This will give you unlimited playtime, but also better audio quality from some loop stations. For example, with the Boss RC30, when you switch from battery powered mode over to a power supply, the sound difference is night and day. The significant upgrade and difference in audio clarity is insane. Once you have recorded a performance and changed some settings, you probably want to know how to save this. Loop pedals are incredible tools for songwriting and finding new ideas, and using the onboard memory, you can save this and instantly recall all of them, just simply by pressing the exit and write buttons simultaneously on all Boss loop stations, and then going ahead and saving this to whichever memory patch you so desire. And once it has saved, you will now be able to access all of the settings that you changed on that patch, as well as the audio that was once recorded. My final tip is always being cautious of feedback. When looping and overdubbing, as you add layer upon layer, you're always introducing more ambient noise within each layer, whether that is directly from the speakers getting picked up through your guitar, or singing microphone, or even crowd noise, people chatting, glass clattering around in a pub or club. And if you don't manage this correctly, it can be an absolute nightmare and your speakers can start screeching and it can be pretty embarrassing. I always like to turn my loop tracks down to 80% to allow headroom for this, and also so you can hear me playing and singing over the top of my loop tracks without it being a battle or a struggle. The loop tracks are meant to complement your performance, not hijack and dominate it. Furthermore, muting your guitar with a tuner pedal when recording your vocal loops, and likewise muting your microphone input with an external foot switch when you're looping your guitar chords, always helps mitigate this situation of recording additional unwanted noise. If you want to learn more loop pedal techniques, you should check out my course, Loop Pedal Basics, over here. But for now, consider subscribing to the channel for more videos just like this.